the jury instructions, combing through those, and then deliberating on each count. This may be just about right. There's some people who say, oh, you have a couple of hours of deliberation for each week or what have you, but maybe in this case that wasn't necessary. And one of the reasons I say that is because, those phone calls between Lori Vallow Daybell and her sister and her son Colby were so incriminating when it came to the disappearance of JJ and Tylee, and the call again with Melanie. So I think there was some pretty incriminating evidence here, and I think that body camera footage of Lori and Chad, Lori specifically being served with those papers in Hawaii, just the body language there, the lack of concern,
yes, it's just brutal.
I think that was really the icing on the cake. I said it on the air the other day. So it's a Memorex moment. And I think that really shows us what this case was about. And in some ways, I feel sorry for Lori Vallow Daybell. That not to take away from the horrible things that happened in this case, but I think she's somebody who's very damaged.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think most would after hearing what they've heard about her in this case. As for the general rule about how long a jury might deliberate, my only general rule is I have no general rules. So whether it's a case I've been involved with on the reporter side or the trial presentation side as an attorney, I give up trying to figure out when they will come to any conclusion because I'm usually wrong. And then I try to figure out the basis for the conclusion, and then I'm wrong about that as well. So they are a force unto themselves when a jury has sat with a case like this for the number of weeks that they have. They have their own life source or force, I should say. And I just feel like this one feels right in terms of the timing. I think, Anjanette, I'm going to get your feeling on this. Conspiracy versus the murder. I think there could be a line they've drawn that the conspiracy is very clear, but with no blood on her hands, as the cliche goes, it's harder to find Lori Vallow Daybell guilty of the actual murders.
And under the law, she would be guilty of the murder. But if you see that she's involved in the conspiracy, sure. But if you think that possibly Alex and Chad actually physically carried out the homicides, you could possibly see where maybe there would be some disagreement here, despite that hair of Lori's being on the duct tape that was wrapped on JJ. I mean, that could have been on there. There are a number of ways that could have gotten on there, but there could be a difference. There could be a line that the jury has drawn between conspiracy and the murder charge, but I think it's probably unlikely at this point.
Yeah, and the bottom line is there's no real distinction in terms of the potential penalty. There's basically a merger of the conspiracy with the act, the underlying act. So even if the jury does draw that distinction, it's really a distinction without much difference. Let me bring Rich Schoenstein in here and Catherine Lizardo and kind of ask you guys a similar question in terms of how a jury goes about their business. Oh, wait, I have a surprise guest. Yes, and she's one of my many bosses. So up in the courtroom, now down with us, is Kathy Rush, and she's here to, is that right? Kathy, are you there in person?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you there. So you came down, you gave up your seat, you've left it with Gigi to handle and come down to share your thoughts with us. I appreciate that. So it looks like a little bit of chaos on the ground in front of the courthouse, not unusual. What's your take?
About the scene, I'm sorry you cut out.
Yeah, give me the scene. Set the scene for me there.
A lot of media. So what's mostly out here is media. And I would say 6 spectators. So that's what's happening outside. But the courtroom is packed inside. And yes, I gave up my seat so I could come down and talk to y'all. And the media overflow room. So there are a lot of people here, many more spectators in that courtroom than media by far.
Give me that number then. How big is that courtroom? What's your take on how many seats it has?
I think it holds 120, but for the media, by the way, they gave no media seats. So we're part of just the public. The public got about 40 of those seats, maybe 50.
That's a pretty
and
big
the rest
courtroom.
are, it's a really big courtroom. But they have tons of benches now filled with Kay and Larry are here. I didn't see any other family members here, but law enforcement. And I don't mean people in uniforms coming in, to make sure there's nothing happening security wise. All the law enforcement that worked on this case, they just filled up 3 full benches. I bet you there's, I don't know, 10, 12 of them maybe, because they all have badges. They're wearing suits, not uniforms. So maybe I exaggerate. Maybe about 8 or 9 of them came in. I thought that was a little unusual. So all of these people that have been working on this case all these years have come to see the end.
Yeah, I mean, they are so emotionally invested in this on a professional level, on a personal level. I mean, these were the folks who found the remains of JJ and Tylee. These are the folks that gathered that evidence to be presented ultimately to this jury that has now decided the fate of Lori Vallow and Daybell. So give us some of the nuts and bolts here, Kathy, about the process going forward. Assuming there is a guilty verdict, how much time would you anticipate before sentencing? What's that process all about?
I haven't heard officially, but I've heard unofficially the sentencing will happen back in Fremont County, not here. So it will not be immediately today, is my understanding.
Yeah. And I would imagine they have the pre-sentencing report process to go through. How about, the victim impact process, again, if there is a guilty verdict here? What do you expect?
Yeah, definitely Larry and Kay will speak, but again, that's going to be the later date at the sentencing. I don't know, maybe Colby Ryan, Lori's older son, will give a statement, but definitely Larry and Kay will. JJ's grandparents will speak.
So there's so many other cases hanging out there. We talked a little bit about them earlier today, the one in Maricopa County for the death of Charles Vallow. But there's also some little far lesser charges going on in Madison County in Idaho. And these were the obstruction of justice and failure to report. They're ticky-tack in comparison. Kathy, do you think those go away?
Well, they were already dropped. The failure to report their kids, the endangering of the kids, those were dropped. I'm not sure if there's anything left in Madison County.
Madison County? No obstruction charges still?
I don't know.
Yeah, again, they're a pimple on on the rest of this this cancerous case. And so where are they going to go after the fact? She's going to be in custody. She's going to go back to what I hear is a lovely jail nearby. And then what, you think then she'll be transferred back to Fremont?
So, yes, she'll be transferred back there, I would assume, until she goes to the state prison. However, we don't know how soon before she's extradited to Arizona.
Right. And again, this is all assuming guilty verdicts. We don't know. We haven't heard yet. We're waiting for the jury's pronouncement, which should be in about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less. Do you get the feeling, Kathy, this is going to go off as planned, that time frame, or is it going to be a little soft and it'll be maybe somewhere in the next 30 minutes?
No, Judge Boyce is pretty timely. So unlike a lot of courts that we've seen where the timing is very loose, the only holdup would be if they knew victims or people involved were still coming. But I think everyone's here. So I would think we'd be pretty close to on time.
Yeah, an hour is plenty of time for folks to gather who have any interest or purpose in being there. So hopefully that holds true. Can you give me any other insights there, Kathy, while I've got you?
I mean, I will say that I knew it was coming down before it was announced it was coming down. Little things you pick up on when you're just sitting in the courtroom. There are two bailiffs that were sworn to be with the jury, and we hadn't seen them all morning. And then one of them came into the courtroom, and he talked to the court admin, and then she got on her phone and started texting, and then it was kind of just calm. And then a few minutes later, Defense Attorney John Thomas walked in, but then it was still kind of calm. But at that point, I said, something's happening. And then the spokesperson for the prosecution team came in and said, raise your hand if you're media. Please make sure I have everyone's phone numbers and contact information. And then I was like, oh, something for sure is going down. And what she did tell us is the prosecution team will not be coming out on camera. They will not be making a statement on camera. But she is working on being able to read their statement on camera. So she may come out and read it. And the defense attorneys told me they are also not speaking. So I'm not sure what sound we're going to get after the fact, but we're definitely going to try.
Yeah, well, some local react ought to be interesting at the very least. I know, Kathy, you've been doing this a while, so your spidey senses were tingling and properly set off there by the what was going on there in the courtroom. What do you think about? You've been following this thing from the very beginning. So, if anything caused the jury members pause, what do you think it might have been? What would they have needed to get them to a decision even quicker?
Look, we're under 7 hours. That's quick. I mean, come on. There's 7 counts. They're very complicated. These counts include overt acts. These jurors don't know this language. And they did not know this case coming into it. They'd heard just very little about it. They were thrown a curveball when they started talking about zombies and religious zealots and on and on and on. And they weren't able to talk about it all of this time. So I think the first hour or two yesterday was literally them just spewing out everything they had been thinking for 6 weeks. Like, what the heck, and then they have to go through it. Look, Tammy Daybell, I think that count might have been a little harder. They had to talk a little bit longer about that, about if Lori was involved in Tammy. It's just a lot. I don't think under 7 hours is a long time at all.
No, I think you're right. And no questions and no requests for readback of testimony.
So we don't know that. You know how it works. It works differently in courts all across the country. And a lot of times we have that on the record. We were not told if questions would be on the record or not, and we didn't hear anything. So we may hear after the fact they had a question, but we don't know.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, because whether we learn the question and the answer, we usually hear whether or not they've requested something. That's very interesting to keep that totally quiet. That is very interesting. So what do you expect? We're not going to hear from the prosecution. We're not going to hear from the defense. It kind of leaves us kind of flat once the verdict is read. What other sources might you be plumbing there to give us some sense of the reaction on both sides?
Well, I have been speaking with the defense investigator quite a bit. If he comes out, I'm going to try and grab him and go on camera. I do think Larry and Kay might come out and say something, and then we may hear a statement on behalf of the prosecution. And there's a lot of the investigators are out here. The problem is I have approached a couple of them, and the ones that I have talked to said, we can't talk because we still have Chad's case coming up. So anything on the prosecution side, they're being tight-lipped because of that. And the defense attorneys, just in general, their personalities, they don't want to be on camera. They don't want anything to do with it. And that's what I've heard through the grapevine for people that have worked with them. Like, that's just not something they do. So we'll see. We'll see what happens when this comes down here in a few minutes and everybody starts piling out.
Yeah. Were you surprised the defense effort was basically cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses? There really was not a defense case.
I was not surprised, and I'll tell you why. I have heard all along that she was not cooperating. She does not want to throw Chad under. She does not want to throw Alex under. And she wouldn't let them do any kind of mental health defense at all. And I think they did what they could have done. And then in their closing argument is when Archibald came out with kind of a brainwashing theory without using the word brainwashing. And Lori was very tense during all that. I don't think she knew what he was going to say in closing. And she was pursed lipped and did not move a muscle. During prosecution closing, she was animated, she was shaking her head, she was taking notes and showing it to her attorney. But during her attorneys, she was just stiff and looking forward. And I think she was upset that basically he was telling the jury that Lori is stupid and gullible, and Chad was able to do all of this. And the interesting thing that I thought about that is maybe 6 people they got following them, right? If you think of Melanie, Zulema, Audrey, Alex, they're all Lori's people. And the funny thing is, Archibald said, Chad made Lori feel like a goddess and that she was going to be this leader of 144,000. She couldn't even get 1 follower. Chad had 6 followers. And that's how he presented that whole closing argument. It was very interesting to me. Like, she's just a sap over here. And then he brought up other religious cults and cult leaders, and people drink the Kool-Aid and kill themselves, and this just happens. It doesn't make sense to a lot of us, but it does happen. I thought he did honestly the best he could do with this case, but I don't think she was happy with him.
Yeah, that's great insight as to how she was interpreting how her case was being presented or not presented or didn't care. Let me ask Anjanette, you've been watching this, Anjanette, and we saw that the defense case was really a non-case, cross-examine the prosecution witnesses, and that's fine. We see that happen. But if you can't get the cooperation of your client, as Kathy is suggesting, what are you going to do?
Yeah, there's not much you can do, Michael. I mean, we were talking about this the other day. What do you do as a defense attorney if your client says, no, don't throw my brother under the bus. No, don't throw my husband under the bus. You don't believe you're mentally ill, but you are clearly mentally ill. We know there were competency issues at the beginning of this case, and there is something going on with her mentally. So there's not much they can do. And I'm actually surprised, since the fact that they talked about these cults and closings was brought up, cult leaders. You heard Kathy referring to this. I actually interviewed, Michael, recently, 2 people who were kind of sucked into cults when they were younger, and now they're experts in this. One was brought into an offshoot of Mormonism, extreme Mormonism, and she said she got out. Another guy had joined the Moonies in the 60s. He got out. And they said, you can be manipulated and really drawn into these things. And it's surprising to me because the woman that I interviewed, Dr. Christine Marie, said she believed that Lori had been, from what she had seen, kind of indoctrinated into this. It's shocking to me that they didn't call somebody, an expert in cults, to testify about this, because Chad Daybell obviously had a hold over her. I think we can see that quite clearly.
Yeah, I'm just hearing from inside the courtroom there, people are gathering, Anjanette, and we could get the verdict in as little as 5 minutes. Kathy, are you hearing anything different there on the ground there? Does it look like this thing is kind of coming to a head?
People here. Well, there's maybe 25 people out here gathering now, spectators. They're starting to walk up more and more, and they're taking their own video with their phones. So I think as it's getting closer, we're seeing more people show up. They can't get into the courtroom, so they're likely just going to stay out here.
Yeah, and they'll wait, and when you announce it to them, then they'll know. Rich, let me ask you this. Rich Schoenstein's here. All of the buildup to this, I'm still focusing on these defense arguments that seem to waffle between Lori Vallow Daybell is too dumb and she was a follower, or Lori Vallow Daybell was the genius who was taking Chad's lead, but then pursuing it in her own way. Well, which one was she? Was she the dummy, or was she the genius?
And that is the core problem with the defense's argument on closing. And I totally agree with Anjanette and Kathy that the guy's hands were tied. He didn't have a lot of places he could go. But on the one hand, he's saying Chad is some mastermind that brainwashed Lori. And on the other hand, he's saying Chad was an idiot who couldn't sell any books and couldn't make more than $20,000 a year and couldn't get any followers. So his own argument doesn't hold together. And that's why I think ultimately it wasn't very persuasive.
Catherine, let me get your input on this as we're waiting these last few minutes. Again, the verdict in the Lori Vallow Daybell case to be read live. We'll have it for you here in just a few minutes. They're getting final preparations done in the courtroom. Catherine, what are your thoughts on that kind of difficult defense position?
Yes, well, there is that ethical obligation of the lawyers as to following what their clients' wishes are. And it's such a great insight what Kathy just told us, how Lori's lips were pursed when her defense attorney was delivering the closing, with the jury watching her every move. If that's the reaction she had, I'm sure they were able to read in somehow that she was not happy with that closing and did not agree with her defense attorney. I could see her just having that look of disagreement and disapproval with that closing statement. And to reply to your question to Rich, I think whether or not she was brainwashed or whether or not she was the mastermind here is a distinction that doesn't make that much of a difference, because at the end of the day, she was part of all of this, and there are overwhelming evidence that she conspired and committed those murders. Maybe she didn't do the shooting or the actual killing, but she was part of it.
Yeah, I really was surprised. Kathy Rustin, let me ask you this. I was surprised that there wasn't more pounding away at Alex, to point the finger at him. make it sound somehow like this was his own interpretation, what he thought needed to be done, rather than a direct order or a request by either Lori Vallow Daybell or Chad. What's your take on the Alex factor?
I don't think Lori wanted them to. I think she was very adamant about that. Now, this is just hearing some things through the grapevine, but I don't think she wanted to throw her brother out there or Chad out there. Also, and sometimes I don't have this opinion of mine isn't that popular. I still think that Lori 100% believes that her children were possessed and that they are in a better place and they are happy and safe.
So you're answering the question I had earlier, which was, was this delusion, or did she really believe what she was selling? And you think she was a believer?
I do think that. I think, remember, after she's arrested and then sometime later, she's found incompetent for 10 months. To be incompetent for 10 months, she had some kind of break. So I don't know. So maybe then all of a sudden she's realizing it and that causes a break and they get her medicated properly and then she's competent again. I mean, there's something definitely going on in Lori's head that I don't necessarily think is in Chad's head. I don't think he has mental health issues. I think Lori has some. Now, that doesn't legally excuse her for being a part of killing her children. But there is something going on in that head of hers for sure.
That's an interesting point. Let me ask you this, Rich. Competency to stand trial, we know, has nothing to do with sanity, and it's not a defense in any way. But do you think if there is a conviction here that an appellate ground could be that she truly was still incompetent and should not have stood trial in any way?
Well, I mean, sure, they may take that on appeal, but I don't think it would win. Competency to stand trial really depends on her ability to be an active participant in the trial. And you could even see, just observing this trial, that she was talking to her attorneys. She was following what was going on. She was paying attention. It looked like she was an active participant. Whether or not she agreed with her attorneys about how to defend the case is irrelevant to that. She was competent to be a part of her defense, and I don't see that being overturned on appeal at all.
Yeah, as we know, if she's able to understand the charges against her and, as you say, participate in her defense, that's good enough. It is curious to me that after 10 months, that changed. So I am very curious to see, well, what was it that changed the position that she was competent when for 10 months she was not? Hey, Anjanette, you've seen this case and cases like it, and client control is so important. And it sounds like Lori Vallow Daybell's team didn't have much control over her. So even if they tried to convince her that, hey, here's the best way to defend you, it's to point at Alex, it's to point at Chad.
To come down about 12:45. It's about 12:47 right now. They're running a little behind. They had to get everybody there, though.
This is the first time we've seen it in the courtroom too. I mean, the
Right.
first time we've seen these cameras, so we really don't know what's going on in order to get that feed going. So, be
Great
interesting
point,
to see it.
Andrea. I mean, you have covered numerous criminal cases. You've been inside the process as well with the Ada County Sheriff's Office. Can you explain it all or help us understand what this has been like for the family, say Larry, who's been going through all
I
this?
can't even begin to imagine what it's like for a family member who, I mean, we have to remember that his process or his experience started long before this trial did. I mean, his experience starts when he doesn't know where his grandson JJ is, and Tylee, and really trying to figure that out. And so, we've heard him say all along that at least the start of the trial was the beginning of the end for him in terms of hoping that there would be justice. And that's what the Woodcocks have asked for. Woodcocks have asked for all along. Kay and Larry's, I want justice, right? And whatever that looks like, and whatever this jury believes that is, he said he has faith in that. He said that is really what he's wanting. Now, in terms of the minutes we know the anticipation as we sit here waiting for a verdict. We've only been covering from the outside, not personally, personally affected by it. And there is anticipation. There is an eagerness to hear what this jury has decided. So no doubt that those who are the closest to this trial are nervous and are anxious and really just want to hear what is being said.
Yep.
But he says all along he just wants justice.
Gene, correct me if I'm wrong. On these murder charges in Idaho, you don't necessarily have to be involved in the physical act
Right.
of murder to be found guilty of murder. Is that correct?
That's right. So in Idaho, for first-degree murder, for instance, you don't have to be the actual actor, but you have to be someone who had encouraged it, talked about it,
Mhm.
and to make this happen, which is much like what you'd see in the conspiracy as well. It's sort of the same language. So
Mhm.
she didn't have to herself have commit the murder, but she definitely was participating in the criminal act.
Mhm.
And that's been the biggest thing along this trial, really, is the amount of evidence that was essentially circumstantial, meaning that there is nowhere in the 60 witnesses that anyone can absolutely say that Lori Vallow said or was at a specific point in time or said with very specific language that I want my children killed, that I will help you take a life. None of that happened. So
Right.
it really is. I mean, the jury is having to piece together information, and we know what circumstantial evidence is, and it's certainly allowed. And lots of cases are built on it because in reality, that's what people do. People try to avoid that direct evidence. And so that is interesting in that if there are guilty verdicts, it will be because the jurors were able to believe that there was no other option ultimately.
Mhm. There you see those 6 counts listed out: a conspiracy to commit murder for each child, and Chad's late wife, Tammy, also first-degree murder in each of the children, also grand theft. Jean, you heard Andrea talk about how the family, Larry, the grandfather, wants justice, and he's been going through what is, regardless of who is guilty of what, he has 2 grandchildren who were killed, dead, and now he wants justice. Can you talk about the sort of pressure that these prosecutors have felt, that you felt from family, to try to bring justice to these families that are so desperate for it?
Oh yeah. I mean, there's an enormous amount of responsibility, there's an enormous amount of pressure in order to bring a case like this forward and not only to get justice for the family, but of course the community and for everybody in these cases. Asking what is justice is a very different question, though. And that's really tough because people have a very different idea of what is justice. And, whether it's, life in prison, whether it's the death penalty, whether it's something less than that, justice takes on lots of different forms. And I really appreciate what he is saying and understand what he has expressed. But this is by no means over for him, unfortunately, in the family. I mean, it's a process and it's a big piece of it.
Mhm.
Of course, there's another trial to go.
Exactly.
Right.
And these cases take on a whole afterlife that are just really, really difficult. The criminal justice system is not for the faint of heart. And I deeply feel for these victims and their families who do want justice, but ultimately are going to go through a very long process, as they already have.
And well, that next trial we know is not even going to start until next summer at the
Right.
earliest, because
Right.
Chad Daybell, Lori's husband, waived his right to a speedy trial, and so it'll be at least another year plus
Right.
before that trial starts. And absolutely, they will be a part of that. And so you're right. This is just, this is not the end. And
Yeah.
this is just one piece of moving toward an end or toward a resolution, but they will live with this obviously for forever.
We've just gotten word that Lori Vallow Daybell and the jury still not in court, so we're waiting for that. Here's a look outside the Ada County Courthouse as numerous reporters from all across the country are gathered there, as they have been for a number of weeks now, certainly not during these court proceedings, but throughout this process, really from the time that Lori was arrested, even before that. Andrea, you've worked in media for years. What do you think was so interesting? Why do you think this case resonated with so many people outside Idaho?
Well, I mean, I used to say that we didn't have a whole lot of crime here in Ada County, but when we did get it, it was some remarkable cases. I mean, we've had some really, cases that really were incredible stories, and this is one of them. In terms of, I think most of us can absolutely connect with a mother. Most people can connect with, with couples and with things that are going on in your life, and yet never in a million years can you imagine getting to the place where you have or orchestrate having 2 of your children killed. You don't understand what has been described as a cult-like religious following that seem to be used to validate or to justify some of this behavior that for all of us felt very, very odd. And I think you cannot help but notice that a pattern look at this family. I mean, there is death. I mean,
Right.
there is death at every turn in this family. That is remarkable, and that is story making. And I think that people have, I know that as I listened to this story and at each step and each turn, I thought, wow, there's more.
Right.
And another thing, and then you start adding into things we didn't even really. This isn't really even part of the trial, but the Brandon Boudreaux being shot out.
You're right.
These little offshoots of this story. Charles Vallow's death is not really a part of this case, other than explaining, motive and looking at kind of the pattern. And yet that's remarkable. And so I
Right.
think there are so many different elements of this story that just had people really intrigued, and add into it again that the following and the religious aspect, meaning, like that there was a reason or a purpose, and that they were ridding the world of these demons, and preparing for doomsday. That makes it a story.
Speaking of all that attention, does that change the way that prosecutors, attorneys in cases like this do their jobs?
Well, they have to be really careful to keep their eye on the ball and to make sure that they stay within their lane. A case like this just begs for a prosecutor to sort of step outside of that and get caught by those red herrings, which people want to talk about, but that are not a part of this case. And I think that the prosecution did a really great job in their closing by talking, you can be religious and you can be a religious fanatic, but you can't be a religious fanatic that uses the religion in order to murder, and keeping your very, very focused on your lane and where you're headed with this, because it would be very easy to get sidetracked.
Do you think that was a big reason that the judge didn't allow cameras in the courtroom, try to keep everybody kind of in their lanes?
I'm sure that had something to do with it. But it's also just the overwhelming nature of this case. She already had issues with some mental health issues. There had been the commitment issues. It just added more fodder, I think. And it does give people opportunity to get lost in the focus, and get a little gossipy about things that distract from really what the jury's there to do, which is to listen carefully to this evidence and to make some big decisions. So.
I'm getting word from the courthouse now, John Thomas. Daybell's defense attorney apparently commented, that was quick, that's good, in regards to the jury deliberations. Again, we will see. They should be, they're in the courtroom right now. Let's go live now inside the courtroom. This is the first time, again, as Andrea pointed out, we have been able to see inside the courtroom. This is the live reading of the verdict in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. Courtroom. Again, you are looking live inside the courtroom now as a verdict has been reached in the Lori Vallow Daybell trial. We're waiting on the judge currently. We see all the lawyers, and Lori has been seated. They are all inside the courtroom right now. We're just waiting on the judge. You can see the courtroom very full. Certainly, there are a bunch of people inside the overflow room as well as a ton of media, national and locally, outside the courthouse as well. This has been 6 weeks now of this trial, including jury selection. So 5 weeks of testimony and information. that the jury has had to take in, parse through, and decide on 6 different counts that Lori is facing. Looks like
All
the
rise.
judge is now-
District Court's now in session. Honorable Stephen Boyce, Judge presiding. Thank you. Please be seated. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are going on the record. Madam Court Reporter, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, thank you. This is case CR 22-21-1624, State of Idaho versus Lori Noreen Vallow. The matter before the court today is for a verdict in the jury trial that's been conducted over the last several weeks in this case. The court will note on the record, prosecution is here represented by Mr. Wood, Ms. Blake, and Ms. Smith. The defense, Mr. Archibald, Mr. Thomas are present, as well as the defendant who is present. The court's been advised that the jury has reached a verdict at this time. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Very well. Let's have the jurors brought in, please. While the jurors are being brought in, I'd like to indicate that this matter is being live streamed on the court's YouTube channel. In addition, the court's existing conduct order is in effect, and everyone needs to comply with that conduct order. This verdict has several counts. The court is going to require that all in attendance abstain from any sort of loud outbursts or sounds that could in any way affect the proceedings in this matter, as the counts are read in the verdict. And I expect to maintain order and decorum, as has been the case throughout this trial with those in attendance. So please keep that in mind once we get to this stage of these proceedings. So with that in mind, if the jurors are ready, they can be seated.
All right, please. Jury's all present, Dr. Warner.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailiff. Please be seated. All right, the court will note that we had alternate jurors that were excused upon deliberations. So now the remaining 12 jurors who have deliberated are here and appear to all be properly seated. Will counsel stipulate that the jury is all present and properly seated from the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
Will the defense will stipulate?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, at this time, the court will inquire then from the jury. Has the jury reached a verdict?
Yeah.
Very well. If you have the verdict form, I'd ask the bailiff to bring that over here and we'll have it brought to the clerk to be read. All right, the court has reviewed the verdict form, find that it's been properly completed, signed and dated. So at this time, I'll direct the clerk to please read the verdict into the record. The defendant would please rise.
In the District Court of the 7th Judicial District of the State of Idaho, in and for the County of Fremont, State of Idaho plaintiff versus Lori Noreen Vallow, aka Lori Noreen Daybell, defendant, case number CR 22211624. Verdict. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled action for our verdict, unanimously answer the questions submitted to us as follows. Question number 1. In regards to count 1 of the amended indictment, is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Bryan and grand theft by deception? Answer, guilty. Question number 2. In regards to count 2 of the amended indictment, is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee Bryan? Answer, guilty. Question number 3. In regards to count 3 of the amended indictment, is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception? Answer, guilty. Question number 4. In regards to count 4, the amended indictment, is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow? Answer, guilty. Question number 5. In regards to count 5 of the amended indictment, is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell? Answer, guilty. Question number 6. In regards to count 7 of the amended indictment, is Lori Noreen Vallow not guilty or guilty of grand theft? Answer, guilty. Dated this 12th day of May, 2023, signed by the presiding officer.
All right, please be seated. Madam Clerk, thank you for reading the verdict into the record. At this time, let me just inquire of the jury, is this in fact your true and correct verdict?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Let me ask now from counsel, does the state wish to have the jury polled?
We do not, Your Honor.
Does the defense wish to have the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the jury will be polled at this time. Madam Clerk, if you would please indicate only by juror numbers of each of the jurors if this is their true and correct verdict individually.
Juror number 4, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 5, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 6, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 8, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 9, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 10, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 11, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 12, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 13, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 14, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 15, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 16, is this your true and correct verdict?
Yes.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. The court does find it's a unanimous verdict in this case, so I will direct the clerk to record the verdict into the record of this case. I'll now have a closing jury instruction for our jurors and also those alternate jurors that are in attendance today. You have now completed your duties as jurors in this case and are discharged with the sincere thanks of this court. The question may arise as to whether you may discuss this case with the attorneys or with anyone else. For your guidance, the court instructs you that whether you talk to the attorneys or to anyone else is entirely your own decision. It is proper for you to discuss this case if you want to, but you are not required to do so, and you may choose not to discuss the case with anyone at all. If you choose to talk to someone about the case, you may tell them as much or little as you like about your deliberations or the facts that influenced your decision. If you decide to discuss the case with anyone, you should be careful to respect the privacy and feelings of your fellow jurors. You should limit your comments to your own perceptions and feelings. If anyone persists in discussing the case over your objections or becomes critical of your service either before or after any discussion has begun, please report that to me. At This time, then, the court offers its sincere thanks to the jurors. I appreciate your patience and attentiveness throughout this lengthy trial. I also thank you again for upholding your important civic duty as jurors in this case. I'd also like to thank the attorneys who tried this case for your professionalism throughout the proceedings and in the pretrial motions that came before trial. At this time, then, the court will discuss briefly sentencing in this case. In Idaho, pursuant to Title 19, Chapter 25, a report is required to be prepared before sentencing called a pre-sentence investigation report. In a typical case, that report takes at least 2 months to prepare. In a case such as this, it will likely take longer. The court will inquire as to a pre-sentence investigator for the time frame required to prepare the report in this case. Upon getting an estimation, then the court will reach out to counsel for determining a date for sentencing. I'll just advise everyone that will likely be, I'm thinking, at least 3 months probably before that sentencing can be scheduled to have the report completed. The court will also advise at this time then, upon conclusion of the proceedings, the defendant will be remanded back to custody of the Ada County Sheriff at this time to be transferred to the Fremont County Sheriff for further proceedings in Fremont County for sentencing. The court will also instruct the clerk to collect any of the jurors' notes pursuant to Idaho Criminal Rule 24.1A. At this time, then, the court will ask that the jurors and any alternates in attendance be excused from the courtroom. And I am going to direct that all in attendance here remain seated until such time as the jurors have been completely exited from the courtroom. And in addition, I'll let the jurors know there is additional information you'll be receiving through the court administration offices on your way out as you leave today. So again, thank you for your service. Court will be adjourned. And Mr. Bailiff, if you could have all rise for the jury.
All rise, please.
There it is. After 6 weeks of trial, including jury selection, Lori Vallow Daybell found guilty on absolutely every charge: murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and grand theft in the deaths of 2 of her children, and also Tammy Daybell, her ex-husband's late wife. Let's go live down now to outside the Ada County Courthouse. Morgan Romero, Shira Matsuzawa. They have been at the courthouse for absolutely every single day of this trial. Morgan, Shira, what was your reaction down there outside the courthouse when it was read?
Yeah, Justin, a big reaction, a big day for the families involved here, but also the people who have been following this trial. Now, there's a circus of media here, if you can see behind us and around us, but there's also a lot of people here who have been following this case closely. And when they read those guilty verdicts, we heard a big woo and a bunch of claps out here and cheering. And, you know, I know Morgan took some video of it as well, because it was a big reaction, if you will.
Yeah, certainly inside the courtroom, the direction was given to everybody who's watching, media, family members, any spectators, that they cannot react. But outside the courthouse, a very different story. I'll have our photographer Jason pan around so you can see. This is the most media we have seen here at the Ada County Courthouse since this trial started almost 6 weeks ago. I talked to a couple ladies earlier. One of them was called for jury duty, was excused early on in the process 6 or so weeks ago. Another lady's husband had made it through quite a bit of the jury selection process. She was here to watch it happen. There's somebody outside with a sign saying farewell, gory Lori. So, you know, this case, as Shira knows, because she's been covering it for the last almost 4 years, has captivated the nation. We've got local media here from Idaho, as well as Utah, Arizona, and national media. And it's important to point out, with these guilty verdicts, there are technically 6 counts, but as they're listed on the indictment, there are 7 counts. And one of those is conspiracy to commit murder of Tylee Ryan. That's Lori Vallow's daughter, as well as first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. There's conspiracy to commit murder of JJ Vallow, her son, first-degree murder of JJ Vallow, conspiracy to commit murder of Tammy Daybell, which is Lori's husband, Chad Daybell's late wife, as well as grand theft. And it's all, the conspiracy to commit murder charges are also tied with theft charges. And again, found guilty on all counts.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people didn't realize that she didn't necessarily have to be guilty on all of them. She could have just been guilty on one or the other, or even not guilty. But today the jury has spoken and they have found her guilty on every single one of those counts.
Yes, and conspiracy on its own carries life in prison with these guilty counts on first-degree murder. Individually, those carry life in prison. Earlier this year, it was ruled that Lori was not going to face the death penalty due to the fact that the prosecution filed some discovery a little too late. Judge Stephen Boyce, who has handled this case impeccably, has maintained extreme professional courtroom throughout this process, had said because the prosecution filed evidence too late, the death penalty is off the table. Now, that may not be the case with Chad Daybell's trial. That is going to be set, or has been set, for next year, so 2024. But before then, Lori still has to be sentenced on all these counts.
Yeah. And I will say it was interesting during closing arguments when we saw yesterday, because the defense never actually blamed Chad Daybell until the closing arguments and yesterday, and they were kind of just throwing him under the bus. And I think a lot of people were kind of questioning that defense approach, and it was interesting to see, though.
Yeah, it was. And the prosecution ended their case and their closing arguments saying exactly what they said when they set out and gave their opening statements. They said, this case is about money, power, and sex. And they said Lori is the common thread through all of this. She is the reason why her kids are dead. Yes, there's conspiracy with Chad Daybell. Yes, there's conspiracy with her brother, Alex Cox. No, the jurors may not know who physically carried out these murders, but Lori is culpable. And so, again, that is what the jury decided ultimately today.
Yeah, and over the period of 6 weeks, we saw 60 witnesses testify, as well as graphic testimony, pictures, a lot of evidence that these jurors saw before making this final decision today.
And ultimately, as we talk about what they had to consider, it was all the evidence presented, and that evidence is witness testimony, but they can give whatever weight they want to any of the witnesses who testified. Given their credentials, given what they said, they can say, we do or do not believe that person. And clearly, out of many of the 60, they chose to believe their testimony. The evidence that was presented included geolocation records, included text messages, included Google searches, iCloud accounts from both Lori and Chad, as well as Alex Cox, who is now deceased, Lori's brother. They went through extensive evidence over the course of 5 weeks, as well as that witness testimony. Jurors had to weigh all of that and say, these are we have to take these and decide if these are facts, and then compare those with Idaho law.
Right, because a lot of it was circumstantial. It wasn't telling you A equals B plus C or whatever the equation is here. There was a lot of deduction that they had to make from this evidence. So it was they had a weighty job to do today.
And the defense even said yesterday, Lori never explicitly said, kill my kids, or I killed my kids. And that's true. We never saw during the thousands of text messages that were presented, the emails that were presented, Lori saying to Chad or Alex or about herself, yes, kill Tylee, kill JJ, I killed them, or kill Tammy. And so that is called direct evidence, and that is not there. However, there was a piece of DNA evidence that was really important. The defense did say yesterday it wasn't the smoking gun, but it's important to give weight to it. A piece of Lori Vallow's hair was found on duct tape wrapped around her son JJ Vallow's body when his body was dug up in a shallow grave on her husband Chad Daybell's property in 2020. And they pointed to that a lot. The defense arguing yesterday, parents' hair is found on kids' clothing all the time.
Yeah.
So, however, again, the jury decided that did carry enough weight to be able to convict her.
And again, like we mentioned, for the families who have been waiting for this verdict, this has been more than 3 years in the works. They have been waiting. They had to sit through this testimony. We saw Kay and Larry Woodcock before they speaking of, we're starting to see people coming out. I think
we're expecting Larry and Kay. We're expecting Larry and Kay to come down to this podium here shortly and do a press conference. We're watching closely, our photographer, to make sure we don't miss that. But continue.
But before the verdict was read, we actually ran into Kay in the hallway, and she was, ready for this moment, and she actually said, "Let's get this." B word. And, they were waiting for this. And so here we are, no doubt a big moment for these families.
And you interviewed her husband, Larry, and Larry has been playing JJ's favorite songs throughout the last couple of days as we've been waiting for the jurors to reach their verdict, as they've been deliberating, saying that this is about the victims. This is about JJ. It's about Tylee. It's about Tammy. This isn't necessarily about Lori. He wants to make sure that the attention also stays on the victims in this case. They have been so perseverant throughout this entire process, so resilient, so strong. It's been incredible to see. We had other family members here yesterday, and who also we need to shout out is the law enforcement that's been involved in this case since the get-go. Fremont County Sheriff's Office, Madison County, Rexburg Police. Shira and I were sitting in the hallway waiting for this verdict to come down. We saw the Rexburg Police lead detective Ray Hermosillo actually pacing in the hallway with the lead prosecutor, Rob Wood, in this case, just anxiously awaiting what we've all been anxiously awaiting.
Because while there's been their families, they've also been working on this for 3 years, maybe more. And, you know, as you mentioned, it's not just the local law enforcement. It was state, county, city, FBI. There was multiple agencies that worked together. They were really doing a joint investigation here. Justin?
Shira Morgan, thank you. We just got a statement in from the Madison County and Fremont County prosecuting attorneys. Quote, "We are very pleased with the jury's verdict, and we want to thank them as well as the alternates for their service over the last 6 weeks during this trial. Given the pending case against the co-defendant," me talking now, that would be Chad Daybell. Quote again, "We are unable to conduct any additional interviews or discuss further details of this matter. We want to assure each of you that we remain committed to pursuing justice for Tyler Ryan, JJ Vallow, and Tammy Daybell. We also want to express sincere appreciation to the many members of law enforcement and the community who tirelessly worked together to hold Lori Vallow Daybell accountable." That's from Rod Wood, the Madison County prosecuting attorney, and Lindsay Blake, the Fremont County prosecuting attorney. I have with me Andrea Dearden here and former Ada County Deputy Prosecutor Jean Fisher in studio. Jean, we'll start with you. What was your reaction to, I mean, all across the board, guilty on all charges?
Yeah, what a remarkable day for the prosecutors. What a remarkable day for, you know, the Woodcock family and their survivors in this case to have that verdict come in on all counts so decisively, so relatively quickly. It's a huge victory for them.
You talked about when everybody was filing in that you've been in that moment before.
It's just so tense and so hard, waiting for the jury to come in. And I mean, your heart is just in your throat, and it's such a tense moment. Yeah.
And I think we were all getting a little emotional about that. Lori, though, maybe having a different reaction. Andrea, what was your reaction to her reaction?
And I was definitely interested in what her reaction would be, watching that closely, and I didn't see a reaction. I didn't see a reaction at all. I mean, we've been in those, you know, cases. We've watched verdicts come down and seen the defense, you know, the defendant cry or kind of sort of slump down or be shocked. You know, you often see defense attorneys sort of, you know, consoling their client as the verdict is read. And I didn't see any of that in this case. In fact, very stoic. And we have seen that all along. And in fact, some of that was the evidence that was presented. You know, when people were talking to her and her own son talking to her own sister, you know, begging, give me answers, tell us what happened. Very stoic. And in fact, sometimes even laughing. And so should I, you know, am I surprised by this? Perhaps not. But I did expect to see some sort of display of emotion or some sort of display of reaction, and I didn't see one at all. In fact, you know, the only other thing I saw was her crossing her arms at the end. I thought that was a little bit odd too.
Yeah, well, I think it's, you know, I think it's been part of the entire case. But you know, when we talk about direct and circumstantial evidence and all of that, you know, the jury also gets to watch her the entire time as this case unfolded, and to see her not respond in a way. And yesterday to be reminded on tape when she's being served with the papers in Hawaii. And again, there's just no emotion. I mean, it is just starkly just horrifying to watch that. And the jury get to see all of that.
How big was that piece, do you think, in the jury finding her guilty on all counts?
I think it cements it for them very clearly that that they had the right verdict, that she was intimately involved in the decision making of this case and was very much in control of what was happening and what she wanted to have happen.
Are you surprised at all that it's guilty on absolutely all charges?
No, I mean, I think that because the way that the Idaho law reads, especially on the murder, you know, she did not have to be there in order for them to find her guilty of murder. I could have seen the jury splitting that verdict and finding the conspiracy and not having to answer the question of murder if that was what was going to tie them up. But I think in the end, you know, they are so interconnected, and truly the state put on a great case and gave it everything that they had, and the jury was convinced.
I think especially on the conspiracy to commit the murder of Tammy Daybell. I think that was the one charge that I was a little bit, you know, interested in seeing kind of how the jury would feel about that, because that is the one that, when Tammy was killed, we know that Lori, evidence shows that Lori was out of town. She was not there. I think that they'd even potentially created some text messages that pointed to the fact that she wasn't around.
Right.
And however, certainly it's because of the conspiracy, as Jean's explained, there was information to suggest that she knew it was going to happen, and was asking about it and wanting more information about her death, and talking about, when we get into the percentages and things that, again, almost like they were speaking another language that I don't exactly understand what it meant, but the jurors, that was enough for the jurors then to feel confident with that.
And before she was murdered, they had new wedding
Exactly,
rings.
right.
They already had a plan.
Yes.
She was very much involved in knowing that
Yes.
this
This
was
was
an
going to
immediate
end.
future
Yeah.
for her without Tammy Daybell being involved.
Yeah.
In that statement from the prosecutors, they talked about the co-defendant, that'd be
Yeah.
Chad Daybell, the
Right.
husband of Lori. Can we glean anything about what this might mean for his trial, which is right now slated to not start for another more than a year? Does this mean, boy, he might try to plead or something like that, or are we full steam ahead?
It's hard to say. Ultimately, the defendants themselves are in control of whether or not the case goes to trial or not, whether they plead or not. People have commented about the defense in this case, what they presented or didn't. And remember, the defendant, Lori Vallow, had a lot to say about how this case was going to go. Ultimately, the lawyers have to make decisions, but I'm sure that the defense attorney in this case, having seen these verdicts, is given some pause and will have a very serious conversations with his client.
Yeah, well, and
And the death penalty is still on the table for
That's
Chad
right.
Daybell.
That's very good.
great point, Jean. Thank
Yep.
you. And Andrea, we were talking off camera. You talked about how really Lori's defense tried to put it all on Chad.
Sure. And really, it was in the closing arguments. Yesterday we heard them say, yes, was she wrapped up in this, relationship? Absolutely. People have affairs. Yes, that happens. But she did not commit murder. In fact, really pointed to Chad and said he was the one who manipulated her. He was the one who, she fell for him hook, line, and sinker, and all that came with it. And really did pin all of this on him. And so it will be interesting to see, having not been tried together, this initially they were going to be tried together, now separate. That allows for some space to do that, that they can kind of point fingers at each other. However, we know that Chad's defense attorney, has been in that courtroom. He's been a part of it. I know he was there for jury deliberation, or for jury selection. He's kind of been in and out of the courtroom all this trial. So it'll be interesting to see what he takes from what has happened. I don't see how it helps. I don't see any way that this verdict helps his client whatsoever, because he has been tied to every single one of these acts, and every single one of these counts has Chad Daybell tied directly to it.
For more reaction to this verdict, again, Lori Vallow Daybell found guilty on absolutely all charges. Let's go live to outside the Ada County Courthouse right now to three people who have been on this case from the absolute beginning and been there every single day. Shira Matsuzawa, Morgan, and Alex as well.
Yeah, Justin, Alex Duggan inside the courtroom this morning as that verdict was read. Lori Vallow found guilty on all counts she faced: first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, as well as grand theft related to the deaths of her children, JJ and Tylee, as well as her husband, Chad Daybell's late wife, Tammy. Alex, we want to ask you, because you saw it, what was the reaction from Lori as well as people who were in the courtroom?
Morgan, basically everyone in the courtroom was ordered to be silent. We couldn't say a lot. We couldn't have much of a reaction, but there were people that broke down in tears. There were people crying outside of the courtroom. I know that Lori she had little to no emotion, very straight-faced. And the defense had their head down most of the time. So it was a very tense moment.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very tense moment.
It was tense out here, especially because the live stream started a few minutes late and we were all watching it because cameras are not allowed inside the courtroom. They haven't been the entire time. However, today the judge was able to live stream, and then we picked it up on KTVB, and then the Associated Press was inside taking photos. So as we were all watching that live stream on
Everyone
our
was
phone,
refreshing.
waiting,
Yeah.
kept refreshing. And because you can make whatever noise you want outside, I reported earlier that people were cheering. People were crying out here. And
What about after the verdict was read? As you were walking out of the courtroom, what was that like?
People were cheering, people were crying. And, beforehand, before the verdict was read, also, people said that their hearts were just pounding out of their chest. And two reporters in front of me were shaking. and the reporters next to me were shaking, and everyone was just holding their breath, and it felt like you could literally cut the courtroom with a knife, like the tension in there with a knife. You could feel people's breath on you. Like it was very tense. Yeah.
Yeah, we were sitting in the hallway before the verdict was read, and we saw prosecutor Rob Wood as well as Detective Hermosillo pacing up and down the hallway, waiting for this verdict to come down.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that they've worked so hard for this. They've waited so long. It's been almost 4 years. They're ready to move on to the next stage. And this has impacted so many people that I think that the emotion afterwards, just the complete breakdown of tears, that was completely justified for a lot of people in the courtroom.
The way it was described yesterday by the prosecution in their closing arguments was a series of events that led to this, right? And when you think about what unfolded, the kids went missing in September of 2019. Their bodies were not found until June of 2020. It was Kay Woodcock, JJ's grandmother, who actually reported the kids missing through a welfare check. And it wasn't Lori herself.
And I will say they are actually
we're gonna
coming
step
out
out
right
of
now,
the
so
way.
I'm going to step out of the way so we can get a shot of them coming out.
Kay and Larry
Kay
Woodcock
and Larry
coming
Woodcock
out of the
There's a bunch of cheering happening right now. As they're coming out, you can see they're being embraced and hugged. A lot of emotions out here right now.
People are screaming, "We will rock you," because that was one of JJ's favorite songs.
Oh, and Larry is now singing "We Will Rock You." He's got the whole crowd singing along with him as well as this is happening. A lot of smiles, a lot of cheers amongst the media as well as the spectators out here right now. This is the day that they've been waiting more than 3 years for.
Okay, Larry and Kay are walking up to the microphone. Again, they've been resilient.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank you. For one time in my life, I'm kind of lost at words. Believe that or not. Look, first of all, I want to thank 18 jurors. I cannot thank them enough. I'm sure everybody has paid attention in court.
Get her here closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure everyone has paid attention in court. I want to personally thank and I want to personally hug every one of those jurors. What they went through, what they saw is mind-boggling. I hope that nobody ever has to go through this. I hope nobody ever has to see and hear the details of what happened to JJ, to Tylee, and to Tammy. Guys, we got 2 more trials. 2 more.
3. Charles, Chad, and Brandon.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I mean,
Well,
Charles
okay.
is in Arizona.
Yeah.
Brandon's in Arizona.
The next trial is Chad. I look forward to being back in this courthouse again if that happens. I hope everybody is here again. I hope that y'all appreciate so much the court system, how meticulous the prosecution was. I think everybody will agree it was amazing job by all of them. And I want y'all to know that even the defense, I shook their hands. I have said many times, I want a fair, honest, and righteous decision. I think we had 18 jurors that all deserve our appreciation, our love, and they gave an honest, fair, and righteous verdict.
You guys really embraced each other in there at the reading of the verdict. What did you say to each other in that moment?
I love you. What else can you say?
Larry, what was it like walking out, seeing all the law enforcement officers in the hallway?
It was,
Do what?
What was it like walking out, seeing all of the law enforcement officers who have spent countless hours?
Oh, I know. We would be
And-
nowhere without them.
You know, as much as I have said up here about the prosecution, the defense, the jurors, Nate, you made an absolute great statement. We have to appreciate, support our law enforcement officials. Those guys sacrificed from their families, from their homes. We will never know the countless hours that they have put in, how much sacrifice they have gone through, and most of all, what they have seen in this case that maybe some people will never unsee. I love them. I appreciate them. There's not one of these guys I wouldn't go in a dark alley with. I cannot thank them enough. Next question.
Larry, what is your final message to Lori Vallow?
My final message to Lori. Y'all ready? Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end. Lori, it ended.
Hey, what about you? How you feeling today? Can you tell us what it was like?
Can I have a
You-
minute?
yeah.
We are elated with this. There was some doubt we would get all of them, all guilties, but we did it. The prosecution is amazing. The law enforcement is amazing. They became our family, and we're keeping most of them for the rest of our life as family. And even you news people, we've made great friends with you guys, and journalists. Oh, and news journalists. Anyway, it's great. Our JJ now, maybe we can get him and put him to rest, as well as Tylee, and do right by them, and we'll see how that works. But anyway, we're so grateful, and we thank all of y'all for your support, and we would never be here without y'all. And so many people have reached out to us, and I mean, I have to tell y'all, we even got a message from someone in Tasmania that is following this case. So it's all over the world, and we appreciate all of you, and thank you, and God bless America, because we're grateful we live here. Thank you. Anybody?
Love always wins.
Yeah.
Hey.
Love always wins.
Love always wins. How many times we heard that? I do have one other statement I'd like to make, believe it or not. I do. I forgot one of the most important things. Ray, what would I do without you? I have one more statement. JJ, I love you. Papa, wish you were here in other circumstances. Tylee, Papa loves you. Tammy, I never met you. Tammy, you are part of our life. Tammy, I am sorry for what happened to you. My heart hurts. My heart hurts for these three. This is what this has been all about from the very get-go. It started with 2 children missing. And I stood up and I said, where are the children? Where are the children? Where are the children? Give us back our children. We're not ending this. This is not the end of this. 90 days from today, we will probably meet in Fremont County. The sentence will be handed down. And I'm going to say right now what I'm going to say in 3 months. Why, Lori? Why, Lori? Why?
Power, sex, and greed.
Power, sex, and greed. For what? For what? Power, sex, and greed. That's all it was. And JJ, Papa misses you. I miss you.
Maybe we can take him home. Let's let Jerry
Thank y'all. Okay, yeah. Get somebody in that's pretty.
Look, here, real quick.
They got the bitch.
My brother Jerry.
That's all I got to say about it.
Jerry is very bashful, and he doesn't talk much.
There you just heard from a very emotional Larry and Kay Woodcock, the grandparents of Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. Some of the things Larry talked about, certainly thanking the jurors for just going through all that and some of the things they saw, that evidence, those are things that are going to stay with them absolutely their entire lives, but called it a fair and righteous verdict and thanked the court system for giving him and the family that fair and righteous verdict. Let's go back live right now to outside the Ada
Mother's Day weekend, the Friday before, and I do believe that the verdicts today are just what I think everything aligned in the universe, and this is what you call poetic justice, and that is a big deal. Big deal.
Okay, as you sat there and the verdict was coming in, did you know, did you have a gut feeling in your heart that all counts would be found guilty on Lori?
That's what we were praying for, Justin, but I can't explain the knots that my stomach was in, and just I barely could breathe, but okay, I know it's going to be okay because our Lord is going to take care of us, and he has seen to it that he's taking care of those kids and Tammy too with his verdicts today.
Back here at the KTVB studios, joined by Andrea Dearden, who's helped us cover this trial for the past month and a half, and also former Ada County Deputy Prosecutor Gene Fisher. Gene, let's first talk about the reaction from Larry and Kay, thanking so much and thanking the court system that you were a part of for a long time for getting them this verdict. How did that make you feel about you and, I mean, your former colleagues there?
Well, I think that the court system that we have in America is amazing, and it's something that a lot of people take for granted, and blissfully, most people don't ever have to experience what that is like, having to go through the criminal justice system and being a part of that. In seeking justice, but it's a remarkable system that I truly believe works, and certainly it did in this case. And I always find it to be one of the most just just tremendously satisfying part of having been a prosecutor for 33 years is knowing that our court system really does work. And we should be very proud of that and remember that.
Mhm. And I mean, I imagine having the family being able to look you in the eye and thank you for that, for getting justice is
Oh, absolutely.
incredible. Andrea, what stood out to you from Larry and Kay's comments?
I think it was interesting too. I mean, to hear him, I think you used the word meticulous, and I think that throughout all of this, but you hear there's a lot of impatience, oftentimes on the part of families. There are, even in the community, and there is a process, and it is meticulous, and they're hearing after hearing, and you are talking about very finite details, and jurors are asked to, talk about those instructions that are very, very specific. And I think he pointed to the fact that yes, it's meticulous, and yes, there are times when we're impatient and we want justice right here.
Right.
But I think, reminding folks why it's like that and reminding people what the point of that is. And in the end, seeing that it's all worth it, right? That there's a reason for it. And when it plays out in the way that you hope it does, I think that's what he was speaking to, is that, and he said, I'll be back here.
Yeah.
He very much recognizing as well as that this is just one more step. Huge sigh of relief for them. Absolutely. You can see the emotion.
Right.
There is, it's difficult sometimes for people to understand. It does appear to be almost like a jubilation, that the congratulatory sort of celebration that comes. We understand that often subsides very quickly, and you realize that you were still left with the fact that, and in the end, you saw the tears, right? The tears about, JJ, I miss you, Papa misses you. So that celebration often gives way to knowing that now we have one more step, and that's the pre-sentencing investigation, the part that they will take a part, they will be a part of sentencing. They will certainly be victim statements that I would assume that they will want to be a part of and make that statement, and that's really about sentencing. And so then they have the Chad Daybell trial, and she's charged in Arizona. They will likely be a part of those. And so this is huge, a big, big day, but there's still much ahead for this family.
Well, and Andrea, you talked about that meticulousness. Gene, you know that as well. There's still a lot to come. Larry said this is really just kind of the beginning. They have the sentencing, and then Chad Daybell has his trial, where, as you said, the death penalty is still on the table. What's next in all this?
Well, as the court mentioned today, they'll start that pre-sentence investigation, which is required. That is a lengthy process where the court will get reports, not only, the substantive police reports and all of the investigation, but they'll also get all of the mental health reports in this instance as well as any other materials that that the pre-sentence investigator might think it's important as it relates to her prior life. I mean, she has had a very very busy life. She's had multiple spouses. Yeah. There's a lot to look at and to uncover, and you want all of that information for the judge for sentencing, that both sides will be able to reevaluate and make determinations on what that sentence ought to be.
I mean, everything really from her stability to her risk to her, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Like everything kind of goes into that report. And so it's as you said, I mean, with somebody who has such a history and multiple different pieces and parts of this investigation, it's going to take some time to get that put together.
Yeah. And that sentencing will not be down here in Ada County. That'll be up in Fremont.
It will be in Fremont County, right?
So a lot for them to handle, a lot to parse through. Again, as Larry Woodcock said, really the beginning for a lot of things, but it is also the end. Lori Vallow Daybell found guilty on all charges. We'll have much more reaction and analysis coming up on the news at 4. Thank you for joining us for this breaking news. We'll see you later.
Woo-wee. That was wild. This case has been going on forever and a day. We have a room in Discord about it. We talk about it in the Facebook group all the time. On the channel, I don't jump into the middle of the pool. You know what I mean? I either go to the shallow end and work my way down, or I just jump straight in the deep. So I wanted to go through all of this with all of you, because it is. And there's so many other people that they need to look at. Jason Moe is one. He's definitely one. And I'm very happy that they have gotten their justice. For one. What a hell of a week we've had. We got to celebrate Letitia together. if you can call it celebrating. Let's look at what Larry said yesterday.
Well, first lights, the party's over. They say that all good things must end. Call it a night. The party's over. And Lori's going to prison today. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful morning. We've had a great day, had a great night last night. We got plenty of sleep. Got to visit with some really good friends. And I see everybody is here this morning. Thank y'all once again. Y'all been so diligent. Y'all have absolutely worked your butts off. And I'm thankful for that. The media's thankful for that. And so many wonderful people around the world are depending on y'all to keep it up. Today is day 2 of deliberation. I think that we'll have a verdict today. I was a bit disappointed we didn't have a verdict yesterday. We understand it. And if we don't get a verdict today, hopefully we'll get one tomorrow. But we know we'll get a just verdict, a righteous verdict. And that's all we have ever asked for in this. So thank y'all once again. I'll take a question or two if you got one.
How are you feeling?
I feel wonderful. I do. Got up this morning listening to Willie. How can you start to have a bad day? Waking up, listening to Willie. That is JJ and I song. We sang that. And if everybody will remember, look back at the bus when I walked on and JJ was playing the microphone, that was the song we sang together. And it may have been one of the, no, it wasn't the last song. We sang other songs. That's the one you remember the most, though. Thank you, sir. Why do you not want to have a positive attitude? Look at it. It's gorgeous. There's not a cloud in the sky. We woke up, thank God. And I absolutely, you cannot wake up with a positive attitude. But turn out the lights, the party's over, Lori. So, any other questions? That song was one of the songs that JJ and I had sang a lot of times when he was riding with me. And amongst other things, I couldn't sing all the songs that he knew because they were hard rock songs. But I knew this one, so I'd sing it with him. You know, I think it was peaceful, believe it or not, because I think we finally knew that it was coming to some finality. And I'm so grateful for the jurors, thankful for the court, and I hope they come back with a righteous verdict. And but yesterday was a good day. It was a sad day for a while there to review all of that, but it was a good day. No. After 4 years, I don't think there's much can surprise me with this case, and I just thank God we're here. Day 2 of deliberation. My God, what a wonderful day. Anybody else?
of the last day?
You know, I feel like it will be the last day of deliberation. But I'll honestly say that if it takes another day, it won't be an issue. And I'm happy to be here every day. And I just feel like we'll get a good verdict. And last night, somebody rewarded this to me. And I just thank everybody. I'm not the world's greatest pawpaw, but I'll tell you what, I hope I was the world's. I hope I was the world's best pawpaw, JPA. Highly. I thank y'all every day. Thank you.
He breaks my heart. He breaks my heart. He never wanted this adoption done. He never wanted it done. And I understand it's spilled milk now, but he never wanted it done. He did not want his grandson to go with Charles and Lori. He didn't want to. And technically, JJ, which is not even his real name, is not his grandson. It's Kay's family. And it's taken such a toll on him. He's just such a magnificent person. He's just got a heart of gold. You know, and people, you know, the bigger hearts, they're easier to shoot. And that's the truth. The more you feel, the more you hurt. You know, he's got the feelings out on his shirt sleeve, so he's easier to attack. It's horrible. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. I feel terrible for him. I go back to this selfishness of these two. And there's no way you can disagree with the prosecutors, because all of this, she's like a Ma Barker, okay? She set everything up. Everything. And nobody died until they got in her way. Nobody died until they got in her way. And who had to die? Tylee, JJ, and then, of course, Chad's wife, Tammy. But before that, Charles. And I believe that she is complicit in the death of Joe Ryan. A lot of people think I'm crazy when I say that. But I believe she's 100% involved in that. This is the selfishness we're looking at.
How's it going? Are you Kevin, Lord? This evaluation, sir. Do you have any questions regarding that? So it is 14:39 hours on January 25th.
need something?
Any questions?
You have any questions for that? No?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Have a nice day.
Have a nice day. How's it going? Are you Shannon, Lord? This is all you can serve.
You have any questions regarding that?
Look at that tub of lard sitting next to her. Look at that tub of lard. He's got bigger boobs than me. And he's entertained by this. Oh, look at this. Oh, now we're going to serve you. Because you can't produce your kids. You're in Hawaii. And I'm telling you something right now, old Melanie Gibb, she should be in trouble too, and so should the niece, Melanie. Look at that. Look at that. When a man doesn't have a neck and he's still married and he writes books about the second coming of the Jesus he believes in and the 440,000, he might not be the dude for you.
So it is 14:39 hours on January 25th.
You need something?
Any questions?
You have any questions for that? No?
Okay.
Okay.
What a dipshit. Do you need something from me? Your kids. Your kids. Produce your kids. And there's Chad sitting there acting like, oh, okay, well, what to do? What to do? What to do? You can't pray that away because you see, we actually have justice on this earth before you get to the next life. These dipshits obviously didn't understand that or didn't care because of the way they are. And I mean, they are horrible. Horrible. What made him go from family man with Tammy and the kids, and his kids believed that he was wired in by her? But what made him go from his happy home life to her? What does she do to these men? What does she do to them? My God. Lisa, did Tammy know Chad was a zombie slayer? I don't know how many discussions about zombies they had. Or if he discussed too much with her about lightness and darkness. You see, basically everyone that's dead was in Lori's way. And that's what it comes down to.
Lori Daybell smirking and smiling as a judge determines she is finally mentally fit to stand trial for the murders of her 2 children. Her latest court appearance comes as Netflix releases a promo for a new documentary about the sensational case.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a drink.
In the documentary called Sins of Our Mother, Daybell's son Colby can be seen calling his imprisoned mother.
How are you, Bubba? I'm not good, Mom.
He confronts her with allegations that she killed his 2 siblings, 16-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ. Their bodies were found buried on her 5th husband Chad's property. He's also awaiting trial.
I would have never thought you would have ever done something like this. What is it that you think that I've done? Are you sorry for me, or are you sorry for my siblings? I'm sorry that you don't really fully understand the situation.
The 3-part documentary shows Lori Daybell as a beauty pageant contestant, talking about her life as a wife and mom.
Being a good mom is very important to me, and a good wife. Being all those things together is not easy, so I'm basically a ticking time bomb.
I have a wonderful husband, Joseph, at home, who is watching our 2 beautiful children, Colby, who's 7, and Tylee, who is 1.
Just weeks before the beauty pageant, she was a contestant on Wheel of Fortune.
I want to call. Okay. Gopher, Doc, Isaac, and Captain Stubing.
Now, as she awaits her January murder trial, Lori Daybell can only ponder how her once promising life has led her to this.
Lori Daybell and her husband have pled not guilty to all charges. Sins of Our Mother premieres on Netflix September 14th.
And it's horrible. And there's got to be more people involved. Her brother Alex couldn't have done all this on his own. No. And that's a death that's got to be looked into as well, because he died of natural causes. How did that happen? You murder Tylee and JJ, and then you just pass away? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think this case is going to go on for years and years and years and years. Tiffany said, I'm so serious. Me too, girlfriend. Me too. I mean, it's just twisted. Are they cultish? Yes. Did she have insane ideas? Yes. Mentally ill? Yeah, of course she is. Of course she is. But she knew what she was doing because she planned everything. I mean, not only she planned it, she financed it, and she talked people into her game. That's what she did. All right, guys. Well, thank you for coming here for the verdict. We haven't really, we've never talked about this case on the channel before, but I just wanted us all to be together to see the verdict because, well, you never know with verdicts which way they're going to go. So in closing, let's have a tribute to the victims. And there are many, in my opinion. There are many. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for jumping in. Obviously, YouTube's doing their job because people are getting their reminders. And I will see you back here over the weekend.